Thank you for your attention. I'm Danforth Prince. I'm president of Blood Moon Productions. We're the company who's honored to have within our stable of writers Darwin Porter, a very talented celebrity biographer, and who is about to release a radical new biography of Paul Newman. A no easy task indeed. For the purposes of this biography, the writer will admit that he gathered the information over the course of 30 or 35 years based on interviews or dialogues with people at scattered random moments. There was never the intentional request for an interview with an intimate of Paul Newman and saying, we're going to interview you about Paul now. Darwin Porter met Paul Newman through Tennessee Williams in Key West in the late 50s, 59 I think. And I think every journalist in America at the time would marvel at the way no scandal ever seemed to stick to Paul Newman. He's emerged as a saint, I mean a very talented man, a benefactor to charity, fine actor, wonderful fine actor, blah blah blah. But it's amazing what has never been printed about Paul Newman. The books about him in the past have been somewhat obsequious and almost breathlessly reverential. Let's review some things that Paul Newman did that didn't draw a lot of press attention at the time. And I don't say this as a moralist, I say this marveling at the quality of Paul Newman's public relations machine, that it would so effectively seem to blot out any sin associated with this, as it turns out, rather promiscuous male movie star. And therein lies the appeal of the book. Yes, it's loaded with gossip. Very interesting anecdotal tales. Paul, in all his promiscuous glory, heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual, quite loaded with anecdotes it is, and the author has indeed attributed, in the context of the writing itself, the source of the various anecdotes that pepper the book. We've already gotten some nice feedback from in-the-know cognoscenti, who has said to us things like, we can't believe that nobody's ever written something earthier about Paul Newman. Blood Moon has done it in the form of this biography of Paul by Darwin Porter, available in bookstores on August 25th, coming up in 2009, very soon from now. It'll certainly encourage some screams from conservative moviegoers who can't imagine that these naughty stories were associated with Paul. Just a couple of anecdotes, just for fun. The book attributes an affair of Paul Newman with Bill Inge, the American playwright, who was the author of Picnic, which was the vehicle upon which Paul Newman built his Broadway reputation. Bill Inge evidently fell desperately in love with Paul Newman, and Paul Newman certainly hung out with Bill Inge enough to placate the man and get the part in Picnic. Tennessee Williams was intrigued and fascinated with Paul Newman. There may have been a bit of hanky-panky there just before, or pursuant to Paul getting the role in one of the great Tennessee Williams plays. Chance Wayne comes to mind. And then there was Gore Vidal, who was fascinated with Paul Newman, casting him in Billy the Kid, which was Paul Newman's adaptation of the Herman Melville Billy Budd tale. Paul Newman's physicality intrigued a lot of very sophisticated artists, male and female. And Paul fucked around Hollywood just as much as any other star did, but the point is that no one's ever suspected this before, written about it before, or indexed it for the library trade before, which is what Blood Moon has taken upon itself to do with this book. It should have been called Paul Newman, Adventures of a Young Man on Broadway and in Hollywood. Paul Newman's bisexual flings were mostly, the author maintains, Darwin Porter maintains, to have been a function of the late 40s and 50s and early 60s, and some early 70s. And as Paul Newman aged, he calmed down a lot and led a more domestic life in the foothills of Greenwich or whatever, Connecticut, Darien, wherever he was, Westport. So Adventures of a Young Man on Broadway and in Hollywood could indeed incorporate the sexual panoply of temptations that would meet any incredibly good-looking young man trying to make his way up the, what we call, lavender ladder in Hollywood. Now this is a delicate point, maybe this won't go over, but today in post-millennium, I think a lot of heterosexual people have at least a clue as to the dynamics going on within the gay and lesbian world. They may have a gay relative who introduced them to the dynamic or the dialogue or the jargon or the argot or whatever. But it's surprising that back in the 50s, the gay stuff really stayed on its side of the fence, and the straight stuff was everything else that went on outside. And the book, as Darwin Porter has written it, is a very interesting insight into the forbidden, sociological, dark side, mysterious side, shadowy side, if you like, gay side, if you like, art side, if you like, sexual side, if you like, raunchy side of Hollywood that the general public really never knew about. So the protagonist of the book is absolutely Paul Newman. It revolves around him. There's an index who's listing virtually every name of everyone Paul knew back then, many of whom came forward to tell tales about Paul to anyone who would listen. So it's a very interesting, sort of charming book. Paul Newman, the man behind the Baby Blues. I'd be awfully grateful if you take a look at it. Thank you.